We continue now at the top of Daf Bezim and Bezim Mesechet Kesuvos. This is Kesuvos Daf Tube. On the previous Amud, the Gemara had said that let's say the woman, she becomes a nida and it is the appropriate time, it is the expected time for her to become a nida. So in such a situation, it's obvious, says the Gemara, she can't tell the husband, well, your field just got flooded, meaning it's your bad luck and you have to give me Mizonos. In that case, certainly she doesn't have such a claim. Kiti boilach, but where is it a question? Shelo b'shas vesta. Let's say it happens not at the expected time. So what would be the halacha then? Kevan de lo b'shas vesta havis, since it's not the normal expected time of her period. So matzia amrale, so she can say to him, she can say to the husband, nistach vasadeu, your field became flooded. In other words, it's your problem. You're going to have to give me the mizonos because the time for the marriage has arrived. O dilmor maybe kevan de ikonoshe de kamishanya vestayu, since there are women that they have their vest changes, the expected time is always changing, so kishas vesta dummy, so it's all the same, it's like the expected time anyway, and she can't tell that to the husband. And the Gemara continues, Pashad Rav Achoy, so Rav Achoy answered this question. Rashi over here says, Pashad Rav Achoy hach boy mimas nisin. He answered this question from the Mishnah. The katani lo nisu velo katani lo nasu. The lishtama shahabayla ma'akvim. It says they didn't get married. It doesn't say lo nasu, which sounds like it's the husband's fault that they didn't get married. It says lo nisu in the passive voice. And so the Gemara over here again continues, Pashad Rav Achoy higiaz man velo nisu. It says if the time arrived and they did not get married, ochlos mishalov, ochlos betruma. So she's allowed to get his mizonos from him, and she can eat truma. So lo nasu lo katani. Again, like Rashi said, it doesn't say lo nasu, elo lo nisu. Rather, what it says is lo nisu. They didn't get married, and Rashi over here says elo lo nisu hein labailim. The way to understand that is that they, the women, didn't end up getting married to their husbands. So talo hakava benashim. It sounds like from the language of the Mishnah that what the reason why this is being held back is because it's being held back for something on account of the women. And so again, elo lo nisu, it says lo nisu. So hechi dami. So what exactly is the case? Now, if they're actually the ones actively holding back getting married, so so why should they eat from him? Why should they get mizonos? And why should they eat truma? In other words, it's really their fault that they're not getting married at this time. So elalav, rather is it not the isness? It's talking about a situation where there was an onus, ki haigavna, in exactly that kind of scenario. And that's exactly what it says. Even though it was an onus of this kind of a scenario, meaning she became a nida, still she's allowed to eat mizonos from him, and still she's allowed to eat truma. And the Gemara continues, Amar Ravashi says, Liola me malach, really I can say to you, kolon so lo achla, that if it's a situation of onus, actually she is not entitled to mizonos. Udukama akvi inu, and when the Mishnah over here says she is entitled to mizonos, it's only when they, meaning the grooms, are holding back the wedding. Uvedinhu di boy leila misne lo nasu. And Ravashi says, really in the Mishnah it should have said lo nasu, referring to the fact that the men are the ones holding back the wedding. V'aidi detana reisha b'didhi, but since the reisha of the Mishnah was phrased as referring to her, so Tananami Seifa Biditi. So also the Seifa of the Mishnah phrases it as if it's referring to her, but again, really only when the males hold back the wedding, only in such a situation is she going to be entitled to the mizonos. And Rashi over here explains, V'aidi Datana Reisha Biditi, since the Reisha of the Mishnah is talking about her, meaning it says Nosan lebesula shnei masar chodesh uli almana shloshim yom. The beginning of the Mishnah says that the besula gets 12 months. Again, it's 12 months to prepare from the time that she's betrothed. She prepares for the wedding for 12 months. And then when it comes to the almana, there are 30 days of preparation. So since we were talking about the women in that case, so again, the end of the Mishnah phrases it as lo nisu, but it's only, again, if the husbands hold back the wedding, that they have to provide mizonos to the wives. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Amar Rava says, Ule'inyan Gittin eino kain. When it comes to get isha, when it comes to divorce documents, the halacha is not the same as the halacha was by the situation of Mizonos that we just quoted. Rashi over here explains, Ule'inyan Gittin eino kain alafikach kai. We're going on the therefore that the Gemara mentioned previously on the previous Amud. Dashmi'inan sha'kavas ha'onus potrasum min ha'mazonos. What we said earlier essentially was that if something holds back the wedding and it is an onus, so then he doesn't have to provide mizonos for his wife. So le'inyan gittin ein tainas onus moelis. The point over here of the statement of Rava is that when it comes to get isha, you can't make a claim of onus. And the case is as follows: Im nasan get leishto. Let's say a person gives a get to his wife. Al menas, on some condition. For example, on condition im lo avu adzman ploni. If I don't come by a certain time, yehei get. So then it should be a get. The get will take effect if I don't return by a certain point in time. V'nenas v'lo. Then some onus happens and he doesn't come by that time. So harei ze get. That is going to be a get because at the end of the day he didn't arrive. Ve'eno yachal lomar onus hayisi. He's not able to claim that I was an onus, and therefore the fact that I didn't fulfill the condition is irrelevant. No, you can't claim that your lack of fulfillment of the condition by get, you can't claim onus. And the Gemara continues, Alma kasava Rava, we see that Rava holds ein onus begittin. Again, there's no claim of onus when it comes to Gittin, as we just explained. And the Gemara continues, Minole l'Ravaha. Where does Rava get this from? What is the source? If you're going to say, it comes from the following Mishnah. Let's say a person says, here is your get if I don't come back within 12 months. And then he goes ahead and he dies within the 12 months. Ain't no get. So the halach is, it's not a get. And so we make the following inference. Meizu de no get. If he dies, so then it's not going to be a get. Hachala, but let's say he becomes sick for something happens that he can't return. Apparently, hareza get, that is considered a get, and you see, there is no claim of onus. And the Gemara says, no, not necessarily. Maybe really, if he became sick also, it would not be a get, because maybe you could claim onus. And maybe the point of the Mishnah, by specifying a case where the person died, is to teach us that chiddush itself. Maybe it's just teaching us the principle, ein get lachar misa, get cannot take effect after the husband died. Rashi over here says, Meis hu de'eno get. If you have a situation where he dies, it's not going to be a get. Tehalo shavya gita ad yud beis chodesh, because the case over here is, it's only going to take effect after the 12 months. It's not retroactive. V'hu meis b'soch hazman. Now he died within the 12 months, so when it's taking effect, he's not alive anymore. Uman kamegarish lo. There's no one really divorcing her if he's already dead. Mehash de'ena meisa megarishim, because again, dead people cannot divorce their wives. And so Rashi continues that the Gemara makes an inference, Meis hu de'eno get. It's only in a situation where he dies that it's not a get. Mishum de'en get lachar misa, because there's no get after death. Aval mishum onus achrin. But let's say there's some other claim of an onus. Lo mifga gita. So that's not going to make the get not good. In those situations, the get is going to be effective. Alma ein onus begit. And you see, you're not allowed to claim an onus by a get. Disalka daita cholanami ein no get. Because if you're going to tell me that it's also not a get when he becomes sick, so nisnicholi, you should say if he becomes sick, it's not a get. V'chol shekain may. Certainly if he dies, she'ein onus gadol mizeh. There's no greater onus than dying. And so then the Gemara said back, no, he gufa kamashmal, and maybe the reason why we're choosing a case of death is to teach us the chiddush by death. We're not saying it in order to make this inference, hachala hareza get, that if he's sick it is a get. Elalashminan he gufa, we're just coming to teach this chiddush, the ein get lachar misa, the chiddush that there's no get after death. Ve'afilu below tonight, even forgetting about all conditions, the point just is you can't give a get after you die. Kigon homer lishto, for example, let's say a person says to his wife, hareza gitech lachar mosi, this will be your get after I die. Ain't no get lepochim and hayavim. That's not going to be an effective get to pater her from yibum. In other words, she's still going to be considered a widow, and if it's a case where they have no children, she's going to have to do yibum. But the Gemara continues, Ein get lachar misa, but are you telling me that this Mishnah is teaching us the chiddush of Ein get lachar misa? Hatana le reisha, that was already taught in the reisha over there. It says, Hareza gitech immati. It says, let's say a person says, this is your get if I die. Hareza gitech mecholize, this is your get if I die from this illness. Hareza gitech lachar misa, this is your get after death. All of those variations, lo amar klum, that's not going to count for anything. So you already see this idea of Ein get lachar misa, so it can't be that was the point of this line over here of the condition of coming back within a year. It must be the chiddush is that only if he dies it's not a get, but again, if he gets sick, it is still going to be a get. And so to that, the Gemara says, Dilma maybe le'afuke midraboseinu. Maybe the point over here is to say the opposite of what our rabbis say. Rashi over here says, Dilma had itzrich seifa imlo basi v'chulu. Maybe the real pshat in the case where if I don't come back in 12 months is le'afuke midraboseinu itzrich. It's actually to exclude the position of raboseinu. To pligiala, because they actually argue, v'amri, and they say, de'in get lachar misahu, de'keven dechsov beget zman ksivasu mochiach. They actually say this is not considered a problem of get lachar misa, because since in the get is written a date, the writing of the date proves shekach amar lo, that what he really meant was im lo basi leososman yehe get lemafreya mehayom. They actually understand this to be a retroactive condition, that it should be a get if I don't return within 12 months, it should be a get retroactively from today. Di lo ma'ash v'gita at shnei masar chodesh lama kasav yom ksivas haget besocho. Because if that was the case, if he only wanted it to take effect after the 12 months, what is he writing the date in there for? Lichtov imlo basi l'rosh chodesh ploni yehi get. He should say, if I don't come at this particular date, then it should be a get. And so therefore, maybe this is to exclude, the seifa is to exclude the position of Rabboseinu, who say that it actually works because it's retroactive. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, for Rabboseinu hitiru alinase, the rabbis, they permit her to remarry, and Rashi over here says hitiru alinase below chalitza, meaning they consider her a divorcee and not a widow who has to do either yibum or chalitza. Lahidim lobasi, in that exact case. And the Gemara continues, V'amrinan, and we say man Rabboseinu. Who are these Rabboseinu? Who is it referring to? Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, you know who it is. It's Beidina Desharu Mishchetz, the Bezdin that allowed the oil. And the Gemara continues, Savri Lak Rabbi Yossi, because they hold like Rabbi Yossi. The Yomar Zmano Shel Shtar Mochiach Olav, like Rashi just said, that they say that the date that's written into the shtar, that actually proves this whole thing is retroactive. And Rashi over here explains, Zmano Shel Shtar Mochiach Olav, again, the date in the shtar proves Lo Lechinam Nichtav Zmano L'Soch. It was not for no reason that this man is in there. Im Lo Lodia Shemiyom Aksiv V'Amesiru Hu Megarshem, must be saying that retroactive to the day of the writing and the giving, that's when she's divorced. If he doesn't come at that particular time, meaning if he doesn't come in the 12 months. Therefore, even though he didn't say mehayom, he didn't write in there, he didn't say it was retroactive, they hold, again, this is the Bezdin, the Sharu Mishcha, that they allowed the Gentile oil, that's what it means over there in the Gemara. That Bezdin is the one that said the same thing over here, that it must be retroactive. Rabbi Yossi Omreinu Tzarech. This is in Bava Basra, that again, there's a case over there where it says you have to write Mehayom in order to make it retroactive. And again, Rabbi Yossi says that's not necessary. And so in any case, the point is, if this Mishnah is just la'afuke from the position of Rabbi Yossi, and it's trying to say that it's not retroactive, so then you can't make any inference in terms of ein onus begittin, because the Mishnah was specifically having a case where the person died in order to tell you that this get is not retroactive. It's got to be chal at the end of the 12 months, and therefore if the person has already died, it's not going to work. Again, la'afuke, from the position of the Rabboseinu, who say no, it's retroactive, and therefore it would take effect in this situation. And the Gemara continues, V'ela miseifa, rather Rava learns this idea of ein onus begittin from the end of that Mishnah over there in Gittin. The Mishnah says, Me'achshav im lo basi mikan v'ad yud beis chodesh. Let's say it's explicit that from now, if I don't come back in 12 months, he's making the get retroactive. Umeiz besoch shnei masar chodesh, and then it says he dies within the 12 months. Harei ze get. So the halacha would be that it would be a get, because again, he died within the 12 months, so he didn't come back, and it's going to be an effective get because the condition was fulfilled. Meis v'hu adin l'chala. And the truth is, it's if he dies, and the same is true if he gets sick, meaning it doesn't make a difference. By meis also, there's a claim of onus, but apparently that claim is no good. At the end of the day, he didn't come back in 12 months, and it is an effective get, and so you see that ain't onus begittin. But the Gemara says that's not necessarily a proof. Dilma meis dafka, maybe only in a situation where he died, maybe only there it's an effective get. Why? Because over there already, he actually wants it to be an effective get when he dies, because he doesn't want her to fall to the brother-in-law, he doesn't want her to fall to Yibum. But maybe in another situation where we wouldn't be able to say that the husband wants the get to work, maybe we would say in such a situation, yesh onus, that he can claim onus and say that he doesn't want the get to be effective. Rashi over here says, first Rashi says, Harei get v'afagav de'ein onus gadol mimisa. At first the proof is, well, there's no onus greater than death. Alma ein onus begittin, you see, you can't claim onus. V'adin l'chala, the same would be true by getting sick, you can't claim onus. But then the Gemara says, no, dilma meis dafka d'chala atzmo shekasav la get machmas kein kasav la. What's the whole reason he wrote her a get? The whole reason he wrote her a get is so that she avoids a situation of yibum. So that's the whole point. So if he dies, so then we can assume, regardless of yes onus, no onus, it doesn't make a difference, we can assume he wants that get. Shem yamos yeh get l'mafrei. The whole point is he wants the get to work retroactively if he dies. Shalot tizakek liyavam, that she shouldn't need to worry about doing yibum. Uvayon salon yichalei l'mevatel gita. He certainly doesn't want this onus to annul the get. Aval ba'onsa achrina, but let's say there's some other onus which he couldn't arrive back. The nichalei levetule gita. There certainly he would want to nullify the get. Gita bay ema loch yesh onus begittin. There it's possible that there is an onus begittin. So therefore there's no proof from this as well. And so the Gemara instead has another proof, elameha. Rather, Rava's proof, ein onus begittin, comes from the following case. The Yahuda Amar Lahu, there was a case where he said to them, Ilo asina mikan ve'at tlasin yom, and if I don't come back within 30 days, lahave gita, let it be a get. Also besof telas and yomenu paske mavra. Now he did come at the end of the 30 days, but then he was stopped by the river. Rashi over here says upaske mavra hanor hifsiko. The river stopped him. Shaisa hamavoros mitzaro ir v'lo yachal lavor. In other words, the crossing to cross over the river, it was on the other side. He wasn't able to cross over the river, and so therefore that was the reason he couldn't arrive. And so when he came, Amar Lahu, so he yelled over to them and he said, Chazud asoi, look, I'm coming. In other words, you can see that I did come. It just happens to be I can't cross this river. So Amar Shmuel, so Shmuel said to that, Lav Shmei Masi, that's not called arriving, that's not called coming in time. As Rashi said, Lo Shmei Masi, V'havagit, it's a good get, meaning he can't claim onus. V'imrotzta tinasi la'acher, if she wants, she can marry someone else. V'gam l'kahuna, if sells me'ayom, she's considered a divorcee, and so she's disqualified from kahuna. That's what Shmuel paskin. So it seems from what Shmuel paskin, ain't onus begittin. But the Gemara says, 1 second, V'dilma onsa de shchiach shayni. Maybe it's different by an onus that's common, something that can commonly happen. Maybe that's different. There you can't claim onus. Because he should have put that in as a condition. He should have realized certain onusim are common, and he should have said, if this particular thing happens, then I don't want that to count, etc. But he didn't do that, so he himself, it's his own loss that he didn't plan accordingly. So maybe by such an onus, we understand an onus begittin. But maybe by other kinds of onusim, maybe you could claim. And so the Gemara instead says, Ela Rava svara denafshe kama. Rather, Rava, it's his own logic that he came to this idea of ein onus begittin. Mishum tzenuos or mishum prutzos. Because of those who are tznuos, those who are very modest, and those who are the opposite of modest, those who are prutzos. Mishum tznuos, in terms of the tznuos, di amrit lo lahav a get. Because let's say you're going to have a situation, and you're going to say it's not a get. Let's say you're going to say that yesh onus begittin. You're going to have the following problem with the tznuos, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Gimel Amud Aleph.